Something happening?
Don't rat me out.
I won't.
You know the butcher? The freaking nut job that goes around just chopping people up? Well, the feds or whatever heard that he's gonna be here today.
It stars Josh Hartnett. This revolves around him being a father that's taking his daughter to her first concert, but he's noticing there's a lot of security, FBI agents everywhere. He figured out that this is actually a trap for a serial killer called the Butcher. M. Night Shyamalan normally tries to play the trick at the end of the film, but in this film he plays it straight through. He lets you know that this is the guy, this is the killer.
Right.
Okay.
The premise is the twist that our main character is the killer, and they tell you that within like the first 15 minutes of the movie. They even tell you in the trailer, so I guess technically there is no twist.
So he's trying to escape throughout the whole film. This movie had bits and pieces of The Negotiator from back in the past, but it's also paired with like Norman Bates, like you know, Psycho type of thing, because there's a key element in here of why he's doing this, how he is as a person. So I thought that was pretty refreshing, and I gotta say, I kind of enjoyed this film from M. Night Shyamalan.
Interesting. Okay. I will say, I think M. Night Shyamalan is just, he's a very mixed bag when it comes to being a director. I think he is an awful writer, and we're going to talk about his writing because that was the main bone I had to pick with this movie is the writing. You can almost feel M. Night fighting against himself and fighting against the script as it goes on. But I will say M. Night might be secretly, he might be the best working producer in Hollywood today. How in the hell does he have movies coming out at this kind of frequency in this Hollywood environment? Steven Spielberg himself says he can't get movies made. How does M. Night have 2 movies out this year, or 1.5, right?
Yeah, and that is true. Yeah,
both of these movies are like favors to his daughters. So obviously The Watchers was directed by one of his daughters, and this movie stars one of his daughters. His daughter plays Lady Raven on the stage. So I'm like, what? How is he just casually cranking out all these movies for his kids like this? On a technical level, this movie's kind of impressive. It looks to me like a real auditorium full of thousands of extras.
Normally films try to film extras and put CGI extras. This was like a lot of people for a full concert.
Like, that's awesome. But I will say, from like a writing standpoint, this has got to be maybe the worst written movie I've seen in the past 4 or 5 years. Like, it is bad, but it's so bad that it's almost hilarious because the movie's like fighting against itself. Just like our character, Josh Hartnett's character, he manages to like wriggle himself out of these like sticky situations. M. Night tries his hardest to wriggle himself out of the corners he's written himself into. But that doesn't necessarily mean the movie's like not entertaining. I could see someone watching this and just laughing their ass off the whole time. Because not only are the police completely absurd, every movement Josh Hartnett makes is outlandish. Almost every word he says is bizarre. It's like, what in the... It came to the point where I was like, is this on purpose? And I don't think it is. I think M. Night is just a bad writer, and he is just struggling to get himself out of these little jams that he wrote himself in. The movie hinges on Josh Hartnett, who is, like you said, the killer, escaping this trap, right? But his job is to stand next to his daughter and watch the Lady Raven concert. The movie bends over backwards to get him out of that chair over and over and over and over and over again. I mean, I would immediately think that was the killer. Okay, I'm like, look at this dude. He cannot sit still. He looks scared. He's moving, jumping all around, going backstage. At one point, and again, this is one of those like little corners that M. Night wrote himself into. At one point, we learned that the killer, Josh Hartnett, needs to get backstage. And in order to do that, he makes friends with a t-shirt vendor. And the t-shirt vendor not only invites him like to where the t-shirts are, but tells him the secret password. I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And then there's another time when he needs to gain access to like a roof. And so he gets rooftop access from a fry cook's apron. Why would the fry cook have rooftop access? Like, the movie is just ridiculous. It's like an unintentional comedy.
I agree with a lot of those things to where the writing is weird. Even more so sometimes the dialogue delivery is weird in this because not only does his daughter play the singer in this, Lady Raven, but she also has speaking lines in this.
Right.
And I'm like, ooh. I'm up here like, geez, the way she's delivering certain things, it looks like she's just reading off of a chalkboard.
They've already established that the police have no clue what the killer looks like. So I'm like, well, why are you here? You don't even know what he looks like. They don't know his race. They don't know his age. They don't know his weight. But somehow they do know his little lamb tattoo on his wrist.
That logic is weird, considering the fact that who we find out is the person who tipped them off. And you're like, why don't you know exactly who this person is if you know the connections between this person and that person?
Right. They established that they laid the trap because of an anonymous tip. And you look at the manpower that the police have here. All of that for an anonymous tip, and you guys didn't check to see who the tipster was, and how does that person know? And then on top of that, like, why would they think that someone called the Butcher would go to like a pop concert aimed at little girls? Like, why would they think that? That would be my first question. The logic of this movie is just outlandish.
Like, sitting in the theater and actually figuring out with him on how he's getting out of this situation, as corny as it may be, I did enjoy it.
For me, this movie felt like a Hitman movie. It involved Josh Hartnett sneaking around and changing his costumes and trying to get little IDs and going behind the scenes. And I'm like, did M. Night just play Hitman? And was like, yo, I'm just gonna make a whole movie around that level, that one level. The script is so thin. This movie only works in the trailer. Seriously, watch the trailer, and that is truly this whole movie distilled. And that's the best of this movie. But to drag it out for 2 hours, I could tell M. Night was struggling. And I was struggling trying to follow the inconsistent like logic of the film. But to the movie's credit, if you set aside the absolutely insane logic of this movie and the bizarre movements that Josh Hartnett makes throughout the film, the movie, it can be exciting, you know, especially like that first hour. It can be exciting because you're like, well, how will he get out? But then after an hour, you're like, oh, M. Night doesn't know how he's gonna get out. M. Night himself is panicking as he's writing, especially when we learn that the person leading the SWAT team is a criminal profiler. What? Since when did they lead the SWAT team? And then it's like a little old lady, you know, and she's like, Constitution be damned. We're gonna search every mail, just every mail we see. Like, what? That's ridiculous. That's absolutely outlandish.
How many lawsuits would you have if that was in real life? Boy?
Oh my God. If I were him, I'd be so happy. I'd be like, great. Yeah, check me, because this shit's gonna get thrown out. Like, this is totally illegal and ridiculous. But then not only were they overly aggressive with checking every mail, but at the same time, they're too lax. So at the end of the film, they had Josh Hartnett cornered. He had a freaking butcher knife in his hand, the whole thing, okay? And what do? He sits down to eat a pie, even though he's gouged a SWAT team member's eyes out. He's literally stuck his thumbs in his eye, gouged him out, and they tase him. They never at any point shoot him or even attempt to shoot him. And then after he's gouged this SWAT team member's eyes out, they lead him outside and they let him just wander around his front yard, and he goes to
pick up a bike.
Yeah, goes to the bike, hugs his kids. I'm like, what?
The reason why this film was made is actually for his actual daughter,
right?
Because she is a real singer. She has a record out and everything, and she actually produced the whole soundtrack to this, and she did all the choreography and stuff for the film. So this was an engine to promote her career.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, literally it was.
Like, M. Night's really pushing for his legacy within his children. He's great at producing. Like, damn. He's managing to convince a lot of people to give a lot of money to make a lot of really bad movies. And it's like, he's just making bad movie after bad movie after bad movie after bad movie. And he doesn't seem to be slowing them down. So, I mean, damn, good for you, M. Night. Like, that's like the dream.
Let's talk about Josh Hartnett, though. Josh Hartnett coming back, and people has been saying online that he is having a renaissance, you know, because last year he starred in the Oscar-winning film of Oppenheimer. Him being a leading man in this, I think that he did a pretty good job with what he was given.
And apparently the reason why M. Night chose Josh Hartnett for this film is because they both have daughters, and I guess he wanted someone that had daughters to portray a father or a father figure. So, you know, all right. But for me, I feel like this movie, the winner of this film is the premise, right? This killer who has been trapped and he's trying to escape the trap. This family man who's also a killer, kind of like the BTK killers, BTK killings from the 70s. Like, I like the premise. And the premise certainly propelled me through that first hour. But that second hour dragged so hard. And then the movie ended in the most bizarre way, where he takes a spoke off a tire because the SWAT team let him wander around his yard for a minute before locking him in the van alone. Like, alone? Like, since when does that happen?
There's nobody back there.
Yeah.
There's nobody back there that's watching him. And that is weird.
They could have just put him in a police car and the police officer would have been able to see him, but no, they put him in a locked room alone. Like, what? And then I guess he escapes. I don't know. But as long as if your logic meter is low, you're gonna love this movie, okay? But if your logic meter is high, if you're like, wait, what? If at any point you're like, what is that? The movie will never answer you. It'll never come back to it. It'll never circle back. You're just like, what is that bull?
What is that?
Like, there's a whole character in here who does nothing except annoy you. There's just like a friend of the family or something like that. He just randomly keeps running into her in the hallway. I guess so Josh Hartnett can have someone to speak to. But that character does nothing. She has no weight at all in the movie. She's just there to pad out the runtime. You know, it's kind of weird. Another movie this movie kind of reminded me of was like Coneheads or SNL's movies back then, like Wayne's World. You know, we've got these really small, thin, flimsy premises that really work for a sketch. Okay, a sketch. But then they, you know, back in the 80s and 90s, they kept dragging them out to whole movies. But I've heard before that there's like a thin line between a clever idea and a dumb idea. And this movie straddles that line like, I don't know what. He is like a trapeze artist, like, or something like that, or gymnast in the Olympics, just walking that tightrope between clever and just completely idiotic. If this were me, I feel like I would cut that whole third act out. Like, this movie shouldn't have never left the arena. But there's a whole section of this film that takes place outside of the arena, and it's just absolutely outlandish. It involves riding in a limo to a house in the suburbs with Lady Raven. It is so stupid. I liked M. Night's instinct to have Josh Hartnett lie and say that, oh, my daughter has leukemia. I kind of like that. I'm like, you know what? What if she actually did have leukemia? And what if this really was something that she just always wanted to do and it really meant so much to her, you know?
She just wants to get up on stage and sing with Lady Raven.
Yeah, and then when she gets up on stage to actually sing with Lady Raven, that could have been an emotional moment for both Josh Hartnett's character and the audience. It's like, wow. This guy really is, in a bizarre way, a good father. You know, he really is doing the thing for his sick daughter, you know? But no, we don't ever get that kind of humanization in the film. It's just like, look, she's a little girl, okay? Little girls like pop music. You know this, I know this. Shut the fuck up and watch the movie. That's kind of how the movie's like. It's like, oh, okay. You know, like if the music was more closely linked with what was actually happening on screen, like if the music got more and more dramatic and more faster paced as the film goes on, that might have been fun, you know?
I can't remember a film that I actually said that I was locked in when it comes to M. Night. And I can't even say Knock at the Cabin, because Knock at the Cabin was an adaptation, you know, from a book.
That one also lost me too, like about halfway through. So yeah. But is he trying? Because these are both like favors to his kids. So I'm like, is he trying? It feels like he made this in the car. Like he was writing this on the way to the set. He was like, oh shit, you know? It's just ridiculous.
It's not like how he was like he was in the lab cooking up something. He's like, man, I'm cooking. I'm cooking. It's like this one, he was actually like cooking food and he was going to write something on the side.
Yeah, he was like, oh, when are we shooting this movie? Tomorrow? Oh shit. You know, that's what it feels like. It's like, okay, so now he gets access to the rooftop to the fry cook. You could just feel how ridiculous this movie is, you know?
And he keeps on seeing his mama.
Yeah, and they really don't do anything with that either. Like, they're just like, oh yeah, he's got some other issues.
That's where the comparisons of the, you know, Bates come in.
I could tell they want to do something with that because the profiler looked like someone who could be Josh Hartnett's mother, right?
Yes.
But the movie never has these characters interact. They never interact. So, like, what's the point of that? You know what I mean? Like, it could have just cut that character out.
Shoot, exactly, because if they interacted, the movie would have been over because she would have caught.
Well, no, they can interact. There could be a little sly moment where he asks for directions for the bathroom, and she's like, but you know, he goes off and does something else, you know, or maybe he scratches his head and she sees the thing on his neck, and she's like, oh, you know, there's a million ways to judge the script up. And M. Night chose none of them.
But hey, I was kind of in the middle for this film. I did enjoy the premise, but yeah, this movie is a whole bunch of bag of weirdness. But that's what we thought about this film. What do you think about this film? Get in the comments below and let us know what you thought of Trap. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. We are almost to 1,000 subscribers. You guys are talking to us. So please, if you are new to seeing our faces, click that subscribe button right at the bottom, all right? And if you did like this review for this film, please hit the thumbs up. Or you can hit the thumbs down, whichever you choose. It is your opinion, but just remember one thing, it is mostly wrong. Thank you, and we will see you in another movie review.